All right.
Hi guys, welcome to xLights Gems. Tonight's presentation, we have James Vance, who's going to talk to us about Remote Falcon, a product I think he released probably 2 seasons ago. I'll pass it right over to him and he can continue on. Thank you, James.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so like Gerald said, so I did start Remote Falcon a couple years ago. So I was told this doesn't have to be super formal, so I'm taking advantage of that, and I'm going to try to keep it informal, go through a few things, and then mostly just open it up for questions. I guess before I start, my screen is visible to everybody, right?
Yep, we're good.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, so this is Remote Falcon. I do have it running locally, but if you wanted to actually go to the website, it's just remotefalcon.com and sign up or sign in. Pretty straightforward. You get an email to verify the email address, and then you're off and running from there. So I guess before I get too far into it, just kind of cover what Remote Falcon is and what it isn't. So the idea behind Remote Falcon was to give a way for viewers to interact with your light show a little bit more. And the way in which they do that is by requesting or voting on sequences that you have sequenced for your light show. There's several different things that you can set up and configure to make sure that that it runs the way that you like. And I'll walk through a few of those things and then kind of an example on a few things and how you can set it up. But when you log in, so the first thing you see is this dashboard page, and obviously I don't have anything going on right now, but if I go back to December, then you can see how many people have visited your page, both unique and total, in case you have return visitors, and then a breakdown of certain requests or votes that have happened for your show. And so you can see here, you can view it by date, or you can view by sequence, how many times it's been requested. I didn't use voting in December, so I don't have anything here, but if you do use voting, then you would see stuff here. And so the dashboard's kind of your overview of how viewers are interacting with your show. So when you first sign up, what you'd want to do is there's a link here that opens up a box describing how you would actually set up Remote Falcon for FPP or for xSchedule. So it does work on both of them, and installing it is very simple. So if you have FPP running, it's simply going to plugin manager, and it'll be down towards the bottom because they're in alphabetical order. And you just click install on Remote Falcon, and it'll put the plugin on your page. And so this will be your starting point for getting Remote Falcon set up. And it's really pretty basic. So there's only a couple things that's needed. And the important part is this remote token that you were given when you sign up that can be found here. This is just an example one that I have. And so this is what allows FPP or xLights to communicate with Remote Falcon. And then the other step would be setting up a playlist. So there are a few things to keep in mind when setting up your playlist for Remote Falcon. And the important part is that this playlist that you create for Remote Falcon, you only want it to be used for getting sequences into Remote Falcon. So you don't actually want to schedule this or do anything else with it other than put sequences in it that you want to end up on the Remote Falcon site. Now, if something isn't working, there is a check plugin that runs. And so if you click that button, it'll look for common issues like, you know, your playlist is currently part of a schedule, or you know, maybe your internet connection is not very good. So it'll kind of debug some common issues that I've seen in the past with the plugin. And really, those are the only things that you need to change. So there are a couple of things you can modify, such as, you know, how far before the end of the current playing sequence do you want to go and look for the next request or the next vote. It does default to 10 seconds. So if you have a slow connection on your Pi, you could always bump that up. Or if it has a good connection, you can lower it. So I have mine at 3. And then interrupt schedule, which I can get into here in a little bit. So back on our Remote Falcon page, I'm not going to really go over account settings, but if you do create an account and you decide that you want to change the name of your light show, you can do that here. But you will notice that there is a link that gets generated. And when you sign up for Remote Falcon, whatever show name you put, it actually generates your own URL. And so if your light show is called, you know, Super Awesome Show, then you'll have a link that's superawesomeshow.remotefalcon.com. And so if I actually go to, let me sign in here. So you can see here that it generates the URL for you. And this is actually where your viewers will go. So when you get here, probably the first thing you'll end up doing, hopefully after you set up your Falcon Player or X schedule, is you'll open this link and you'll be presented with this default page here. And so this is the page that everybody ends up with, and it is fully customizable. There's a lot of things that you can do with it, and I'll show some examples of what other people have done. But this is just kind of the basic page that you get when you start. So kind of the meat and potatoes here is the viewer settings. And so this is where you have the ability to really customize not what your viewers see, but how you allow them to interact with your show. So there are 2 methods in which the viewers can interact. One of them is Jukebox, and the other is voting. So Jukebox is exactly how it sounds. Just imagine, you know, a jukebox in a Waffle House. You go in, you make a request, and it plays. Anybody who makes a request after that, while that's playing, it will wait for their song to finish before playing the next one. And so it's literally a first in, first out type thing. PSAs. So this is if you have a sequence that is something like, you know, please turn off your headlights, be considerate to others. I know a lot of people have those. Then you can turn this on and select which one of your sequences is actually your PSA. And you can set the frequency of how often that plays. So if you want your PSA to play every 3 requests or every 3 voting rounds, then you can set it to do that. And you can pick more than one. So if you have multiple PSA sequences, then you can filter through those. And message display time, I'll get to that. So the advanced settings here will change based on whether or not you have Jukebox or voting enabled. And for Jukebox, we have how many songs can be in the queue at one time. So if you don't want your queue building up to 50 requests, then you can set this to something reasonable, like say only have 5 songs in the queue at one time. And then the queue has to kind of die down before people can start requesting again. This request limit is kind of different to explain, but essentially what it what it does is it prevents the same sequence from being requested multiple times, like one right after the other. So people like to use Baby Shark as an example. So if you don't want Baby Shark to be requested back to back a dozen times, then you might set this to maybe, 3 or more. So if I say the request limit is 3, that means that a single sequence cannot, if a sequence is requested, then 2 other sequences have to be requested before that one can be requested again. So in other words, it can't exist in the queue unless there's 2 other songs before it. And I can show an example of that whenever I show how Jukebox works on the viewer page. Check viewer present is a way to make sure that whoever is on your page is actually at your show. And a couple things you can do. So you can have a code that your viewer puts in on the page in order to make a request, or you can use GPS location. And if you choose GPS, then you can set like how far of a radius you want to use to make sure that your viewer is within that area before they can request a sequence. And then hide sequence after play says that if sequence 1 is requested and is played, if I set this to 2, then 2 more songs will have to play before the sequence is visible again. So it's kind of another check to make sure that somebody doesn't vote or request the same song over and over by literally hiding it from the list for a certain number of songs or voting rounds. And then for the voting mode is a little more simple. So there's only 2 extra options here, and that's preventing multiple votes and resetting the votes after a round. So prevent multiple votes is exactly how it sounds. Once somebody votes, they will not be able to vote again for that particular voting round until the sequence is played and voting starts again. And if you want to reset all the votes after each sequence is played, then you can turn this on. Otherwise, it will maintain all the votes from the previous round and it'll carry over to the next one. All right, so being informal, I would actually like to open it up, see if anybody has questions so far on it.
What's the web address again to get all this started?
Yeah, sorry. It's remotefalcon.com.
Thank you.
That was also pasted a moment ago in chat. So if you look in your chat, you'll have the actual link for it if you like.
All right, well, I will go ahead and move on to the fun part.
Do you, quick question, do you have
Yeah, sure.
some ideas? I mean, as far as just what is typically set up as far as on those, I mean, some guidance to make sure we don't get our numbers too far out, or, you know, just on the settings that you were talking about, making sure we don't go too high or too low. That's
Yeah.
what.
So I think one of the more common ones that you're referring to is the jukebox depth and the request limit. So obviously, if you have 5 sequences that your viewers can choose from, then you don't want to set this to anything 5 or higher. I'm sorry, the request limit, you wouldn't want anything 5 or higher, simply because it could mess up how the sequences are requested. And I'll give an example of that because it'll be a lot easier to kind of show how that looks when you actually request a sequence. But for the most part, there isn't really a wrong number that you can put in. But I think understanding how this request limit works will make it a little bit easier to determine how to set that value.
And you can change that value, right?
Absolutely, yes.
I think you probably have to restart your show or something. I'm not sure.
So that's actually different this year. So one thing I did with the plugin is in the past, if you made a change to something that required a restart to the plugin, you actually had to restart FPP, and that was a huge interruption to people's shows, obviously. So I did make changes so that you no longer have to restart FPP. You can just restart the plugin, and it will pick up any new settings. But the only setting that requires a restart that you make on the website is the control mode. Everything else, when you change it, it automatically reflects without making any restarts or anything like that. So yeah, that's a great call out.
With GPS, does the person that's being pinged for their location, do they have to have their phone set to a specific, have location on or something? I mean, can that fail if
Yes, yeah,
on the
it
user
can.
end?
It can, and that's happened in the past. So what some people have done on their page is specify that in order to make a request, they have to have location turned on in their browser. And when you first open up the website, it will prompt to use to enable location. If they deny it, then that will prevent them from being able to place a request. So they do have to accept the location on that in order to use it. All right, so I'm going to jump into the viewer page, and that is modified on the viewer custom page link here. So you can see I have two sections. So I have something that looks like a website and something that looks like a lot of HTML code, and that's because it is. Rick Harris actually helped out quite a bit with the styling, and made great comments as far as what happens when you change certain parts of this file. And so you can see all of the styling stuff is towards the top. So I'm not going to go through HTML. I know not a lot of people are HTML or CSS gurus. I'm probably one of those. And then towards the bottom is the actual text and stuff that gets put into the page. So a quick note on this: there are certain things that you do want to try to keep, and they're called tags. So if you see anything that's inside of these curly braces, this is a tag that tells Remote Falcon that it's some value that needs to be replaced on your page. So you can see here, I have like a queue size, the next playlist now playing. So what happens is when your page is up, those things get replaced by the actual value of what's going on. So what's currently playing, how many songs are in the queue. And so everything else you can play with, how you want it to look. And there are sections for both voting and for just regular jukebox. And so it will change dynamically based on whatever you have picked. And that's done with this this tag here. So it'll hide things and show things based on your particular settings. Anytime you make a change to this, so let's say we change the title here. So it will update, the preview will update as you make changes. So last year you had to download the file and make changes and then re-upload the file. Now all you have to do is make changes here and see how they look. And if you're happy with it, then you just click Save Changes and it will show up on your actual viewer webpage. If you are making changes and you don't like what you've done, you can click reset and it'll go back. If at some point you've totally botched your your file, if things aren't working, you can also revert back to the default viewer page, which looks like this. That is it's not permanent. So if you make changes and decide to revert, you can always nope, that's a permanent change. So you want to make sure you maybe save this to your local computer just in case you do something you don't intend. And then a couple other things here. I'll get to the viewer page on the gallery. You can change your page title and the icon that appears at the top. So that would be this title and this icon. So just kind of a little more customization. All right, so let's say you come here and you have no idea what to do for your viewer page. The viewer page gallery is a great place to get inspiration and to steal other people's creative ideas. But if you see a page on here, it's because they have kindly shared it and allowed you to use what they've created. If you see one you like, you can click a heart. So you know, there's some pretty popular ones. And if you want to see what the page actually looks like, then you can click the link and it'll take you to their webpage. So you can see he has a nice off air button, but when it's actually enabled, it shows on air, shows the tune to, and you know, different stuff in here. Now, if you really like this page, you can just copy the HTML and then go back to your page, and it's literally get rid of everything and paste it in there. And so this is the HTML for this particular page. And if you save it and refresh your page, now you can see it's updated with the page that you stole, but you had permission to steal it, so it's all good. If you decide you don't like it, again, you can revert to default, save that, and you're back to where you started. There's a lot of viewer pages on the gallery, and so you can flip through all the different pages and see what people have done. So you have snowflake animations. You can see someone else stole that page. So a good place to start if you're just trying to get an idea for what you want. And finally, on this part is the sequences tab. So in FPP or xLights, whenever you sync a playlist, so you select your playlist and click update, they are going to show up here on your sequences page. And there are a few things you can do from here. So one of them being, if you don't like the way the sequence name actually looks in FPP or xLights, then you can rename it. You can reorder how the sequences appear on your page, or you can sort alphabetically. And one new thing that was introduced this year, and it is sequence groups. So if you click this manage sequence groups, then you can see I actually have a group created called sequence 3. And if I want to create another group, then I could type it in and just hit the plus button. If I don't want it, I can remove it. So a little bit about what sequence groups do is they group sequences together. So here I have a command from Falcon Player So in my playlist that I have synced, I have my 3 sequences, and then I have this volume adjust command. And it's literally just adjusting the volume to 100. I have the whatever note you put in is how it appears here. And then it has a command notifying what it is. And I have them grouped together into a single group called sequence 3. Now, if you look over on my show page, you can see I have sequence 1, 2, and 3. But what you don't see is this volume command. And it's because if I group sequences together, then it's going to display on the viewer page whatever the name of the group is. And when a viewer selects that particular group, it will execute each item in that group in whatever order you have it in here. So if I select sequence 3, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to run this command in FPP to set the volume to 100. And then it's going to run sequence 3. And so it's adjusting the volume, and then it's playing the sequence after that. You can group sequences together. So let's say this is actually an intro. I can create a group called intro and sequence 2. And I can add both of these to that. And then on my page, it groups them together. So if a viewer selects this particular item, then it will play your intro, and then it'll play the sequence following that.
Quick question. So
Sure.
it looks like only the group shows up. So a sequence can only be a member of one group, I presume?
Correct. Yeah. So yes. So a sequence can only be in a single group.
And then once
Yep.
they're grouped together, the individual sequences would not show up for selection on the page, right?
Correct. Yeah.
All right,
And
thanks.
you can, if you wanted to get by that, then you could by adding a sequence again. And then I would recommend probably renaming the sequence in FPP because it'll probably cause some confusion because they'll have the same name here as well. But you can upload the same sequence more than once. So if you wanted to show individually and you wanted it part of its group of a group, then that's one possibility.
I had a question. So
Sure.
if you wanted to do like a group of Christian music and a group of like country music, you can do that, correct? Is that what that's for?
Kind of. You can do that, but you have to keep in mind that when a group is requested, it will play everything in that group, like without stop. So, it'll play. So for example, if I click this, let it update. So you can see sequence 1, which we said was the intro, is what's coming up next. And sequence 2, which is the main sequence, is what we'll be playing next. And so we can go to our status page here. We can see sequence 1 is playing. And then once sequence 1 is over, then it'll play sequence 2. Anything that gets requested will just get added to the queue, but it will not interrupt that group of sequences. So they will all be played together. So if that's I don't know if that would be your desire or not. If you have, if you have 10 Christian songs and 10 country songs, I don't think you would want to play, all 10 of those in a group necessarily, but. And then real quick, I'm going to change to voting here so that you can see what that looks like. And so here's what voting would look like. And so it's the same thing. So it groups them together. And then it will play them back to back until they're done. And then the next voted sequence or normal schedule will resume. So you can see here after sequence 2 was done playing, it picked up where it left off. So at the end of sequence 4, it picked up the request. Once the requests were done, then it started off with sequence number 5, and it'll just pick up wherever the show left off during that request. The only exception is if you have interrupt schedule turned on. So what this will do is if Little Drummer Boy is playing and somebody decides to request a song, it will immediately start playing. It'll interrupt Little Drummer Boy and it'll play what they requested, and it will abruptly restart Little Drummer Boy right where it left off. So it's kind of a disclaimer there. If you do choose to interrupt schedule, then the sequence will pick up exactly where it left off, which could potentially be kind of jarring to viewers. And so I would say, use this
Some
with
people
caution.
have like a 30-minute generic sequence playing until somebody drives up to their house, and then they
Yes,
go and insert the song they want to play, and then it goes back to their generic house outlines after
Yes.
the song's done.
perfect example. Yep.
So interrupt
Yep.
sequence, it'll play, if you don't have that on, it'll finish the song, not an entire playlist, right?
Correct. It'll
Okay.
finish the sequence it's currently
Sequence,
playing. Yeah, correct.
Not the whole playlist.
Correct. And there is a wiki. If you like reading, it's pretty lengthy, but it needs to be updated, but it does cover, a lot of what's seen here. And I think the last thing that I want to cover is this sequence request limit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of my groups here. And also, you do have the ability to hide sequences. If you have a PSA, you probably don't want your viewers to be able to select that sequence. So you can make it invisible and it will not show up on the list. If it's part of you can still put it as part of a group as well. It'll still play it. You just won't see it on there. You can delete it. Or if you want to play something immediately, this will, even if there's 10 requests in your queue, whatever you select will play next. So if you have somebody who sends you a text message and like, hey, I want to see this one next, then you can fire it off from here as well. So you think of it kind of an override. Okay, and I'm going to go back to Jukebox. And I'm going to set this request limit to 2. And I think that'll give us a kind of a good representation of what it does. All right, so right now, sequence 4 is playing, 5 is up next, as per the schedule. So if I select sequence 1, then that's one playlist or one sequence in the queue.
So this is what a user would see on their phone if they're sitting on their car, right?
Correct. Yep. And then if I select sequence 2, it'll let me do it. So it'll add that. But if I try to select sequence 1, okay, that one did let me, because I need to actually set this to 1. And another good thing we have here is the ability to view requests. So you can view the queue, you can delete specific ones, or you can delete all of them, and that'll clear out your queue. The same thing exists for voting if you have that set up. So I'm going to select sequence 3. And if I try to select sequence 3, again, it's actually letting me. So I'll probably need to fix that. But it looks like it is. Still running my set volume here. And I might need to. Resync this because I've made some changes to it. All right. Okay. So we'll see if this works or if I have a bug here. But sequence 1 is selected, so it should prevent sequence 1 from being requested again, but it is doing it. And so this here should be preventing it from getting requested, but it is. So I have to fix that. Pretty bad example there. Yeah.
So for clarity, you have to put your sequences name in the sequence list in Remote Falcon, and it doesn't use your playlist from Falcon or from Pixel Player.
Can you repeat that?
So you're implying that you have to put your sequence list in Remote Falcon, right?
Well, so in Falcon Player, what you're doing is you're creating a playlist
Mm-hmm.
that has your sequences in it that you want to have in Remote Falcon.
Okay.
And you're just from the plugin, you're selecting which playlist that is, and you're sending it to Remote Falcon. So you're really only creating them in one place, and then you're sending it to Remote Falcon.
So in your example, you sequence 1, 2, 3. It
Correct.
gets those values from your playlist in Falcon Player, right?
Correct. Yeah. So whenever
cool.
when I request sequence 1, then the plugin on an interval while your show is playing, it reaches out to Remote Falcon to see what the next request is, and it grabs the sequence name and just fires it off within Remote Falcon.
Okay, cool.
And so
it's just a point there, just stating the obvious here, your Pi, your FPP, or your X schedule has to be on the internet, obviously, right?
correct. And that's one of the things that this check runs.
Okay.
Because when you set up, for those of you who set up Falcon Player, you have to get your DNS stuff set up, otherwise you won't have access to the internet. And so this runs that check, as well as making sure that your remote token was entered, and that your remote playlist isn't scheduled or anything like that. It also checks for lead-ins and lead-outs, which your remote playlist isn't supposed to have. And so if you're experiencing issues, then that check plugin is usually a good place to start.
This the web page that's hosted on the actual Pi.
Which one? This?
Yeah.
Or this actual website?
The actual website.
No, this isn't on the Pi. So I had this running just locally. This is all on a little more technical. So it's all running on a Kubernetes cluster online in the cloud.
Azure or AWS or
DigitalOcean.
okay. So can you go back to the HTML custom viewer?
Sure.
I noticed some people, this might not be a good one. Can you open up the one you had, the first, I think you still have a copy.
Oh yeah, I might.
So I noticed they were using Amazon links. So did they set up their own like CDM or CDM?
Oh yes. Yeah. So images, if you want to put an image on your website, you have to have some place to put it. And so like these looks like they were put into some Amazon buckets. There are other things that you can use, like free image hosting, or there's other ways to get around it. Like you can even turn your image into base 64 if you know how to do that in HTML. But if you do put any image on your website, you have to have a place to put it.
And we're limited to one page, from what I can tell.
Correct.
There's no
Yep.
way to like go in and have like different links off of here and to pages that are within the same server.
Correct. Yeah. So it's just one single page. I have tossed around the idea of having like allowing multiple viewer pages,
it.
like for Halloween or for Christmas. But if you have any links within your page, they need to go
What,
somewhere.
what
other than
about
remote Falcon.
embedding this into another website? Has anyone ever done that?
Yeah, so I have some viewers who have used iframe with pretty good success.
Okay.
Another option is under account settings, you can actually request API access. So this is, you probably need to be a little more technically minded with this, but essentially
Gotcha.
what this gives you access to is all of the same endpoints and API that's used by the viewer page. So the ability to request a sequence, get all your sequences, see what's playing, what's up next, etc. And then you could actually integrate Remote Falcon into your own website, like your own domain, if you wanted to.
And lastly, the view custom page again. You can go back to your default.
Yep.
Can you scroll down to the list of songs in the HTML?
Yes.
This might be in the wiki, but where's what's it? The Jukebox Queue? Is that what
So,
that
so this
selection
shows,
from is?
yeah, so this shows all of the songs that are currently in the queue. The
How about
actual
the available
sequence,
songs?
the actual sequence list is this.
So is that an array? Can you like dot something that out to get certain ones?
No, so what this is I put this in a tag. So what happens, the application was written in React. And
I'm
so,
not super familiar with React.
so essentially what's happening is React is going through this entire HTML file and it's looking for these tags
And replacing them.
and replacing them with the actual like values, like the actual playlists or the location code, or your queue size.
I was just thinking about
Yeah.
ways of doing what the one person asked is you can sort your, like have categories. I was thinking if you could sort that out as to individual sequences, you could actually make a table and have different sections.
Right,
then
I get what you're
put-
saying. So,
And then
so
control
you'd have
which-
one section. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just a thought.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't see anything for me that would need to do it, but I was wondering if that would be possible for the person who was asking.
And can I state the obvious, I think?
Sure.
If you're going to use somebody else's layout and they change the location of their images, yours will break. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, most of these, like the images are pretty specific to the light show, so I imagine you would change them anyway. But some of these more generic ones, like this off air, on air, yeah, use that at your own risk. Being aware that if something, happens to the Amazon account or to that image link, it will go away on your page.
You can't go out, you cannot go out and grab that image link and make it your own.
You sure could. Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
I would be careful. I would ask the person if you really don't want to piss people off.
Well, they
You don't
offered
know
it
if
up here, so I don't.
they could have purchased it. They could have, you don't know where they got those images from.
Right, and I mean that, like I said, that's all valid stuff. So that being said, there is a Remote Falcon Facebook group. So if you haven't seen it or haven't joined it, feel free to join it. There's a lot of people in there who know a lot of stuff about Remote Falcon who can definitely help. And if you see a page or something on the gallery and you just say, hey, I think this is Jason Toy, right? xLights. Tag them and be like, hey, can I use this image or something like that? I mean, I'm sure nobody's going to call you out for that, but
Is the
What
code
are
open
the,
and available anywhere? Like where someone would want to host their own Kubernetes?
Okay, so not yet. So the first step to that was me converting everything to like Docker, Kubernetes, containerizing everything. Before it was just hosted on like a, regular Linux server. So that was step one. Step two is a bit more tricky because this website does use certain third-party tools that require API keys that I can't just provide because they're linked to my account. So I have to figure out ways that I can provide an image or even, open source the code without including these third-party things. So for example, I use a tool called split.io. And essentially what that is, it allows me to make changes, but then put it behind this feature toggle and then turn it on for certain people or turn it on at certain times to kind of, test things. And so I have to figure out a way to work around that before I can start giving people, images to use on their own cluster.
How secure is this? Can the 9-year-old down the street break into my computer?
Yes. Sure.
If a 9-year-old breaks in your computer, it's not going to be through Remote Falcon.
Okay.
And it's because Remote Falcon, so the communication is one way. So Remote Falcon never contacts your local FPP. FPP only calls Remote Falcon to get the sequence or to upload sequences. So if somebody gets into your Falcon player, then yeah, they're gonna, that's running on your local network most likely, and they'll have access to that. But
So Remote Falcon on the front end, it doesn't send
nope,
the request?
doesn't send anything to FPP. FPP only reaches out to Remote Falcon. So it's
sitting there
one-way.
queuing. Oh, because it's at that 3-minute, 10-minute thing. So it's queuing
Or
Remote Falcon for the next song.
Right. So like the 3-second yeah. So the plugin is running on Falcon Player and it says, hey, there's 3 seconds left in the sequence. I'm going to call this API on Remote Falcon and find out what's next. And then it's going to get that back from Remote Falcon.
This is genius.
Can you show the X schedule steps? Anything odd in there?
I can try. So X schedule is pretty basic. I'm going to open up xLights here, see if I can do it. It's been a little while since I've done that. So Remote Falcon is already under the plugins list in X schedule. And you can, so you start it, click options, and then the edit menu is where you would put in your remote token and the playlist. And xSchedule also has like the ability to interrupt a sequence. It has the ability to, an option to clear the queue or clear all of your votes when your schedule starts. So if you have any, and Falcon Player does the same thing. Or it can do the same thing. So if you have any sequences or whatnot in the queue, when it starts, then it'll clear it out just to make sure there's nothing left like from the night before. I thought I clicked that to open it. Oh, the viewer control. So there are some. See if I can pull up the commands in FPP here. So when you download the plugin, there are some commands that get added to Falcon Player if you're running 5 and up, which I highly recommend. If you're on anything less than 5, please upgrade. It will work with FPP4, but it's not supported anymore. So anything new, you won't see it there. So these are commands that you can add to like your normal schedule. And so you can choose to stop the plugin at the end of your show in the evening. The most common one is turning viewer control on and off. And so an example of that is in my, sorry, if I created a schedule that ran my show playlist, then in the show playlist as a lead-in item, I can actually add an FPP command to turn the viewer control on. So if viewer control is turned off, then your page is going to look like this. So default is going to say like our show hours are, you know, such and such, or whatever you want it to say, like the off air button. And then when your playlist actually starts, then it can go and turn that viewer control on so your viewers can start interacting with your show. And then at the end, as a lead out, you can say turn it back off. Like when my show is done, stop all requests and stop all votes. And then as kind of an extra bonus to make sure you don't have like 25 requests in the queue that are going to be playing until midnight, you can choose to purge the queue and reset all of the votes at the end of the night to make sure that whatever's playing is the last thing to be played.
So when you say your show's done at 11 o'clock, it'll hit, FPP will hit these lead outs, turn off the viewer control and stop all baby shark requests.
Exactly. Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Even if there's songs in the queue?
Correct. Yep. If there's so the problem is like if my show ends at midnight, there's no way it would. If my show ends at 11, I think it's probably more reasonable. And there's 10 requests still in the queue. Yeah, I don't want my show, especially if I have outdoor speakers maybe during the weekend. I don't want my show running and continuing to play all those requests. So at the end of the show, I'm gonna turn control off and I'm gonna just clear out the rest of the requests or the rest of the votes. That way it doesn't keep playing.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. I mean, if you want to, if you want to let your viewers sit out there and continue watching through their requests, then, by all means you can do that. Just be aware that your show will keep running as long as there's requests.
But the only reason I'm asking is because you use the insert playlist command. And I don't think if you have back-to-back sequences or requests that it will ever go back to the main playlist and hit that lead out item.
Okay, yeah, so that's a great call out. So if it will resume the schedule where it left off, and so I'm pretty sure depending on how you set up your show, I think it's a stop type. If you set it to graceful, it will finish out the playlist before it stops.
No,
and
that's
so
just finish the song. Graceful.
Graceful loop would finish the playlist. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
And so another option is you could also add a command to say at a certain time, I'm going to purge the queue or reset the votes or turn off the viewer control. And so rather than making it part of a lead in or lead out, you can actually schedule that command to run as well.
Yeah, I would recommend doing that because I think the functionality, the way that it works, because you're inserting a playlist in there, it's going to reach out and grab the next playlist. So if you have 3 or 4 in the queue, it won't return and shut off. So if it's sensitive to be shut off at a certain time, I would suggest doing this, but also put it on the top of your list because FPP is priority based. And so, yeah, it won't hit that command if the other one has a higher priority. This way it'll hit the command and turn it off.
Yes, that's a great mention there. Yeah, because if songs keep queuing up and coming through, it's never going to reach the end of the playlist to run the lead out. So yeah, very good. Um. Oh,
Uh,
it defaults to dark theme because dark theme is much better than light. So just, yeah.
To ask
Yep,
a
well-
question on
Sure.
in there last year, show next play would work in the jukebox mode, but it wouldn't work in the voting mode, even though I copied the text down into the voting mode. Is that something that's not supported in voting?
What was it again that you tried?
Show the next playing song in the HTML code. There's one in the voting mode in the code, but there wasn't in, it was one in the jukebox mode, but it's not in the voting mode. So
Correct.
I copied it from, yeah, it doesn't
Correct.
work in the voting.
Yes, and so, I could change that pretty easy to where it shows, what's playing next, like from Falcon Player. But the reason there is no what's playing next when in voting is because you don't actually know what's gonna be playing next because it hasn't been voted yet, right? Does that make sense? So that's why it's not there by
Yeah.
default. And just shows like what's currently playing now.
But you'll see it in the vote list, right? The voting count. People will say, "Oh, that the top vote getter will show at
Right.
the top of the list." And
Right,
people say, "Oh, it's sequence 3. I want sequence 2," and they go and vote sequence 2, sequence 2, sequence 2 to get it to the top of the list.
but yeah, if you know, if people would like to have it where it shows like still what's playing next in the normal schedule, then I can add that to the voting part. That'd be a pretty easy change. And actually, let me. I'll
Yeah,
make a
that'd be
note.
great. Thank you.
There we go. All right, are there any other questions? on
If
this?
you already have a queue, if you have it set up for a queue, and maybe there's like, I don't know, 5, 6 songs, however many songs, and you're like, yeah, and me basically would be like, no, I actually want to listen to this song next. Is there a way to override all that?
Yeah, you go to your sequences list and then just hit the play button.
Okay.
What happens
And
when
yeah,
that sequence finishes when you manually hit it?
it's treated just like any other request or vote. So when this, if there's a request playing, then it will queue this one up to go next. And when this one is done, it'll either resume your normal scheduled playlist or it'll pull in that next request.
Also, does the images in the custom website, does it cache those or does it call them every time?
So it does cache the images. So another little bit of tech. So I do have everything running through Cloudflare as a proxy for, you know, to make sure everything stays secure. And
I'm
I
just
do,
thinking for if someone wants to, like me, if I want to put them somewhere, just trying to estimate how much bandwidth it's going to pull. That's all. It sounds like it's almost none.
yeah, it shouldn't be too much. So it's going to depend though. If you put your image on like one of those common local, like common image websiting, like websites, and it's a large image, then potentially there could be, you know, in order to pull down that image and display it, there could be some delay. But one thing I changed is this page. So last year, the entire page would refresh like every 5 seconds in case you made changes. It doesn't do that anymore. So the only thing that refreshes on this page are the dynamic things, like what's playing, what's next, and your queue. Everything else, it pulls down one time and displays it. And if you make a change, then you actually have to refresh your page. And so that helped quite a bit with some performance stuff that, that came up last year.
It would hit the server every time a new person opened the site.
Yes, it would. Yep.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Hey, John D, what's your question? John D, what's your question? Guess he doesn't have one.
All right.
What sort of resources does this do to your show computer? I mean, is it extremely minimal, or will you notice a difference if you've got a TRS-80?
So when you say show computer, I'm guessing you mean like running from xSchedule?
Yes, I'll be running from xSchedule.
So I haven't heard of anybody having issues, but like you said, it does kind of depend on your show computer setup. But the plugin in xSchedule is pretty light as far as what it requires. So my uneducated guess would be that there probably wouldn't be anything noticeable going on if you're running that plugin. But I would, like anything else, I would say test it and see how it works for you.
All right, cool. Thanks.
So yeah, so Keith Wesley actually wrote the plugin part for xSchedule. I've not done anything on the xSchedule side, and so he kind of is the only one who's worked with that. And then I primarily work on the Falcon player side.
Any last questions, or I don't want to cut you off, James. Did you have more stuff to
No.
cover?
No, I think that was it. Yeah,
Roughly
and,
how long does it take for a person to get set up?
so it depends on how long it takes for you to get emails to your inbox, because really it's when you sign up, you put in your show name, email, password. As long as you're not a robot, you're good. You'll get an email, and you click the email. It'll verify to just make sure your email's valid, and then you sign in, and it's all from there.
Cool.
Where
And
do
we
you
can help out people in the Zoom room if you're having issues. And I know James is very helpful on the Facebook group as well. So
Yep.
anybody
Where is the
looking to get set
DNS
up.
settings done?
The DNS.
Can you
Oh, for
set your own
Falcon.
custom domain?
For
Or,
yeah. So when you sign, you're talking about like your lumislightshow.remotefalcon.com.
So if we wanted, abc.com.
Yeah. So you would just have ABC. But
No,
you're
but that would be abc.something.com, right?
yeah, .remotefalcon.com.
Is there a way but it has to be .remote Falcon root domain.
Correct. So
Okay.
like you can see my light shows lumislightshow.remotefalcon.com.
But you can redirect any domain name if you
Yeah.
want. I did that, and
Gotcha.
there's lots of people that do it. Yep.
Yep, for sure.
For $10 or whatever it is to register a domain name, you can repoint it.
Yep. The only thing, if you do change your show name, that does change your URL. So I know some people, I know Jeff Tell, he displays his Remote Falcon site on a matrix, and some people have QR codes. If you do change your show name, that does change your URL. So if you change that, make sure any existing viewers know about that.
And in order to link it to your own website, you have to click that request API button first.
If you want to actually, so this will allow you to call the Remote Falcon web service. So from your website, you could set up PHP, Python, like whatever language you would use to actually make API calls. And you can set that up on your own domain and your own website.
Okay. But that's way over my head. But if I just want to have like my Williams Family Lights linked to this, I don't need to request that API. I just got to do something else, which I'll figure out. But yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I use Google Domains. It took me like 5 minutes, and I'm a novice. You go to Google Domains, you choose your domain name you want, and it says, what do you want to redirect it to? And I said, myshow.remotefalcon.com. Save.
Oh, perfect.
15 minutes later, I could go to myshow.com, and it worked.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. So to give a little bit of insight into what's required for like, you know, the API thing. So if you go to the wiki under code, there is an example, and it's, you know, to make sure it's secure, you have to, you know, you generate a JOT token based off of a, you know, access token and secret token that you're provided when you request access. And it's literally making like the web service calls. If you decide to do it, then like this is a good starting point if you want to try to add it to your own website. So, you know, I have this HTML, JavaScript, and PHP set up. You can literally like download these files and run it exactly how it is, replacing these two things with the actual like values that you're given when you request access. And so it's pretty, it requires, you know, knowledge on how to do some PHP and stuff, but the sample is enough to kind of get you running.
All right, James, we're going to wrap it up here, at least
Sure.
for the recording, guys. If anybody's recording, we're going to stop the